And now, an XCW special presentation of Men of Honor Season 5.
Welcome to XCW Men of Honor. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most epic feuds in XCW history. We're going to be talking about the Untouchables versus Vk3. First off, my panel got former leader of the Untouchables, diehard Corey Lee. Sounds like I'm saying this again, but I am. A former leader of the Untouchables, Chris Jones. One half of Blackout Inc. as a member of Vk3, Katie Hazard Chaos. And a man who debuted shortly after this feud happened, Ryan Grayson. Now, right off the bat, let's take a look at these, the people who made up these two teams. First, Vk3. It was made up of two tag teams, basically, at the time. There was the Blackout Inc. tag team of myself and Hazard, and Team Rain, the team of Kurt Genocide Acid and Vapor. That's what made up Vk3. And it's really weird to think about Genocide was actually a part of a stable. Because typically he wasn't.
That's true.
You never spit anything! Okay.
Well, to me, Team Rain, the thing that stands out the most is clink, 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 clink.
Oh god, here we go. Not the fucking medals.
Then you had the Untouchables. Originally starting out with then referee Karnage, who was a turncoat on Hazard's return. We had James Cerebral. We had Nathan Vandiver. Chris Jones. Later on, we had the joining of Krysis. And then after Chris left the group, or was basically kicked out of the group, Corey Lee became the new leader of the team. Almost like a nexus to the new nexus, huh? Now think about some of the names in this group, in these two groups. They're like super groups. Can you guys recall or talk about what really kicked off this huge rivalry?
Of course I can fucking talk about it. Starts off
who's making their big return? Hazard. Started off, I believe, with me and you earlier on in the evening, and started to jump you. I think it was me and James Cerebral, we jumped you. And
I was partners with Genocide at the time.
kind of allying myself with James Cerebral early on, and kind of beat the hell out of you guys, and then who comes and makes a save? The returning Hazard setting up for the tag team match later on in the evening, and then, well, I'm thinking, he's coming back. How am I going to cut his heat off? Right there. Don't want him to gain no heat, no nothing. Cut him off right at the start.
No.
Pay the referee.
I was to say, Karnage coming in my opinion, was the biggest turning point. That's literally what jump-started the feud. What about you, coming in out of being gone for a year, and this is what happens your first day back? In my opinion, from the writing standpoint, it couldn't have happened any better. But as for your return, and you on a personal standpoint, it's like the ultimate insult.
I mean, everyone knows that, I know everything that goes on. I mean, obviously, I knew this was going to happen, but if you're watching from a fan standpoint, I'll look at this as a fan standpoint. It is a straight shot in the foot. Hazard's coming back. He's making his big return. Everyone's thinking that right before Hazard left, his biggest thing was Fletch.
Right.
Right before I left, I was feuding Fletch, and they're thinking that I'm going to turn and obviously go with Chris Jones. Well, instead, Karnage counts as the 1-2 and flips me off. So,
and then destroys the entire locker room, which I'm sure you loved, right?
And
some of the fans.
And a couple of fans.
And the most interesting part about this All or Nothing with Hazard's return and Chris forming this mega team that then, like I say, consisted of himself, Nathan Vandiver, Karnage, and James Cerebral. You had nothing whatsoever to do with this. As a matter of fact, you were working a babyface, feuding Brandon Hardcore Hobbs and Nightmare for the XCW Championship.
Yes, I was. When I first seen the Untouchables, become the Untouchables, I was a little intrigued because I knew I wanted to keep the title and everything like that and, be champion. And eventually Brandon was out of the way, and then I had to deal with Nightmare. And Nightmare took the title from me, and I figured there was only one way to get the title back. And that was, to get in with the Untouchables.
And that's exactly what Corey Lee did. Now, one thing about the beginning of this feud between the two teams was the unspoken why did the Untouchables turn on Chris? And why is that? It was like it's a completely unspoken, thing.
Well, from an individual standpoint, anybody will turn on anybody to get what they want. I don't care if you're a face, a heel, you want the world title. I was obviously gunning for the world title always, no matter what team I'm in. My character wants to be the focal point. And I think another thing that fueled it was, if you remember, when I made that speech in the garage, you lose, done.
And Nathan Vandiver did just that.
Everybody attacked Nathan Vandiver. I didn't deliver the super kick. You remember that? I did not super kick Nathan Vandiver. I told him we're done, we're leaving. I think that left a sour taste in their mouth because I showed a little bit of favoritism towards Nathan Vandiver. So that could have fueled some dislike, and maybe they didn't like the way I ran it. But look what happened. I'm gone for a year with injury. Corey Lee comes in. He's the leader of the Untouchables. Then they go down the drain.
They all managed to get too big of egos. Especially
However,
James Cerebral.
Okay, but in your opinion, was the Untouchables a success without Chris Jones? I mean, you got to think Krysis was still international champion for a little while there. The only one that really fell off was Nathan Vandiver.
I don't think there's actually a more stand-up, better team with either or. I mean, it was all the same. Like Corey said, their egos is what got the best of them. They did not like the simple fact that Corey was champion. And it was all imploding from heels have the egos. James Cerebral, Corey Lee, Karnage, all of them have egos.
One thing that stands out to me that came from the Untouchables, the most important thing that came from the Untouchables, in my opinion, was a major star in Karnage was made. Karnage ended up going on later that year, defeated James Cerebral in SummerMania for the XCW Championship, which was mega at the time. Never, ever had a newcomer like that made that kind of impact in XCW to that point. I mean, even Chris Jones, who came in, debuted, and within a few months was XCW champion, the way that Karnage was progressing and the way he came out of the Untouchables, in my opinion, was completely different than anything we've ever seen before. But who do you think gained the most out of the Untouchables?
To be honest, me.
And why is that?
Because you got to think, granted, they turned on me. I went down with injury. Think about what happened when I came back from the Untouchables. Untouchables are, even when I was gone, the mind games that my character played with the Untouchables, with the video packages and stuff, even that wasn't just the Untouchables, it was also playing mind games with the other people as well.
Right.
I came back, interfered in your guys' match. Next show wins the world title. My second show back, I win the world title. And then I have the big thing all year, and then fight in the first ever Undisputed match. Going to SummerMania to wrestle you for control of the company, then spawns the EVW. Then that SummerMania, I'm still wrestling. All spawning from the Untouchables.
Right. What do you think?
Well,
because that's a different standpoint than maybe what I was thinking.
Well, he has a good standpoint, but I want to say Karnage, since Karnage came champion. And I mean, I kind of fell off there a little bit, but then, like he said, he came back, won the title, and then he feuded me for the Undisputed title. So in the end, it both benefited me and him, but it benefited Karnage most in the group out of all the other people.
Do you think that the fact that you had Nightmare in the back of your mind, when Nightmare was, I mean, think about it, some people are like, Nightmare, and you're going to think about the last few years where Nightmare's either not been around or only wrestled one match, lost to James Gerke, or played some, comic gimmick with Devil. This is not the same Nightmare. This was a Nightmare who lost to LOL, was unmasked for the first time, and went nuts. He was a top player.
He was very aggressive then, and then he eventually, like you said, he fell off. He became the shell of his former self. He just wasn't the same anymore.
Soft.
He got soft. I mean, after feuding Nightmare, I know what it's like to play mind games. To be on Chris Jones' level of playing mind games. I know what to do to get in people's heads. And that's all thanks to Nightmare.
So what was more of the implosion? You guys mentioned egos. Okay. But what was who was the biggest downfall in the Untouchables? Was it the fact that you were champion and maybe that was where someone like James Cerebral, who had already been there, wanted to be? Was it the fact that, Krysis was trying to hold down Vapor in the International Championship picture and failed? And the fact that your team came out at one point to set the table on fire and it backfired? Was that a downfall? Was Karnage the fact that he was the nice guy and tried to split everybody up, Did he play it from the inside on a nice guy standpoint? Because Karnage ended up being the star in the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Or was it VK3 all along?
I'd have to say it's a mixture of all that, especially somebody like James Cerebral, who had the biggest ego out of all of us. He really wanted the title, and he couldn't stand, me being leader. He couldn't stand Chris being leader. He wanted to be a leader. You put James Cerebral in any group, and if the group implodes, it's his fault. Who wants to be at the top all the time? James Cerebral. Look at what happened to EBW. Look who wanted to be at the top then.
I kind of agree, but if you say like it'd be James Cerebral's fault, you gotta think about it. When I first came with the idea from the Untouchables and I started it, my first pickup was James Cerebral. When me and Gabe brought the EBW idea, who was the first pickup? James Cerebral. If James Cerebral wanted to be the top guy, why would he go back under the tutelage of like me and Gabe?
Well, he did.
He did go back under the tutelage.
He's one of the most two-faced people
Obviously,
in the business.
Chris, you see something in James Cerebral.
As in,
That he's your
The fact that he's your go-to guy?
He's your number one draft pick every time.
because from the Chris Jones character standpoint,
Because, despite what people think, Chris had a lot more pull in this Untouchables storyline than he has in any other storyline he's been in.
because the Untouchables originally was a team in ABW.
Right.
That's where I pulled the name from. But I think James Cerebral is one of the people that could be easily manipulated. His character can be easily manipulated story-wise. I convinced them to join ABW. But then look at all the other people that joined ABW too.
The only thing that's different to me in that perspective of James Cerebral and EBW as opposed to the Untouchables is that James Cerebral ended up living, breathing, eating, sleeping, shitting, everything EBW.
He really did.
Like, he literally made EBW his life. For that entire year and a half, James Cerebral was everything EBW.
And the funny thing was, when it came down to the end of the storyline with EBW and stuff, when we did the big spot where I beat Corey Lee at the beginning of the match or whatever, he was legitimately surprised that ABW won. Like, I thought he was going to have a heart attack.
He wanted to just be the leader of everything, period.
I think James Cerebral just wants to be under someone's wing, but pick the easiest spots to get. We came out and we attacked everybody every show as EBW. We took what we wanted. He probably assumed everything was going to happen the same way in EBW.
He's a weasel.
Yeah, he wants to weasel his way to the top the easiest way he can. If that's to come...
That's a trademark of a good heel, right, Chris?
Yeah, I do the same
Okay,
thing.
here's the thing, though. Is there competition between the two of you because you were both leaders? And in comparison to each, I know that it imploded under yours. But would the same thing have happened if it was still Chris?
Well,
Yes.
it probably would have, but at the time, I had no issue with Chris, and they were looking for a leader, and he was gone.
He was gone only because they made him gone.
Exactly. He was gone, and they wanted a new leader, so they chose me.
Let me ask you a question. You say, what would have happened if Chris Jones was leader? What was the implosion of MPG? Mean Zero took out Vapor and started a new team. Well, if I'd have been there, I think I'd have been involved with the own implosion of the Untouchables. I'd have picked out who I didn't want to weed out, which was the beginning of that whole speech, trying to weed out the weak links. And I think it would have came down to me and James Cerebral or me and Karnage probably being partners.
Was there any chance at all? Okay, VK3 did a mutual split instead of an actual full-on breakup like the Untouchables. Was there any chance at all from the beginning of it being the other way around? Because you got to think, the original Team Reign joined together. Vapor turned on Genocide to create New Power Generation, which was probably the second biggest gang warfare type thing we had.
Yeah.
Plus, you're coming off of a year of Hazard being gone, and for months and months and months on end before Hazard left, he tortured me. He attacked me on crutches. He burnt my 401k. He beat the shit out of my girlfriend.
Good times.
Okay, so had time gone, if the Untouchables could have stayed together longer, would VK3 eventually have fallen apart, or were they such a good unit? Because the main focus of almost 20 minutes of the show has been the Untouchables. What about VK3?
I think over time they would have imploded because you got to think, like you said, Vapor turned his back on Genocide, which led to you and Genocide feuding. You guys were feuding at the beginning, and then him and Vapor have feuded, and then fucking you beat Vapor for the European title. You guys feuded, so I mean, you all inside character-wise, y'all hated each other down too.
What made VK3 work? Why was it so unique?
Common enemy.
Was it Chris, or was it but Corey?
Corey made himself a common enemy by joining the Untouchables. Because when we began, who was always our biggest enemy? Chris Jones. He had a team, so that what we'd have to do?
Make a team.
The only thing about it is that myself attacking him at the end of his match, plus, like, when I attacked Chris, the Untouchables was out there and never touched me once. So why didn't the two factions come together?
Maybe the Untouchables seen it like, because you go back to making the speech, maybe they thought that I lost. Maybe they thought that you attacking me and not being able to defend myself, maybe that was me losing and them kicking me out of the group.
There's a lot of different weird scenarios that I've never thought about when it comes to this storyline and how things happened and who the people were and how, like, because if you think about it, in the Untouchables, there was no bad blood with anyone who was in the group prior to the Untouchables. VK3, on the other hand, the more dominant team, the team that literally split and went their own ways to focus on different areas instead of an actual breakup, were the ones that stuck through it until the end, which is really weird.
You gotta think about it like this too, when you're in a team and you're not the leader and someone else is the leader, you kind of hold that leader to a whole new thing, and you, like, if that leader shows weakness, then you don't think that they're a good leader, they need to be at that point.
Do you consider...
That was something with VK3, we didn't really have a leader.
It's true.
Whereas Christian and Corey Lee were leaders, VK3 didn't have a leader.
Would that have been a difference maker?
I think if it would have been you a leader, it may have caused a little bit more bad blood between the group. Or if me being a leader, like, you know, if one particular person would have been a leader, I think it would have ended up with some bad blood because one of the other people would have been jealous.
Here's something else. What if VK3 and or the Untouchables were still around when Chris came back? What do you think the scenario would have been? Because if you think about it, in the long-term thing, it was Fletch versus Corey Lee when Chris came back. Which is still what some could consider the two leaders of the teams. So, what happened if they still had the 3 or 4 others backing them before, you know, when Chris came back?
I don't think...
Would Chris have been the monkey in the middle?
I don't think Chris would ever amounted to what he was explaining earlier. If both teams had been backing the other two, I don't think Chris would have been out where he was when he came back.
I could picture Chris coming back and picking off members of the team one by one like he normally would do.
That's what I was thinking, you know, with
He'd
the promos.
pick them off one by one.
Would Chris be pretty much the Genocide of the VK2 to PG situation?
He would have been stuck in the middle. But yet he would have taken out every member of each team.
Because you got to think, it's always, no matter how long down the road we go, whether we wrestle for another 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, the common goal of Hazard's always been eliminate the virus in XCW. Chris Jones. The common goal of Fletch, always eliminate Chris Jones. I mean, I'm always the top heel everybody wants to get rid of. I think it'd have been more difficult of a situation if they were together, because then I would have had to change my mindset coming back, because I knew the storylines, what was happening when I was when I was gone, because you obviously told me about everything that was going on, so I would have had to change my whole new mindset, come up with a new game plan. So I don't think I'd been in the exact same situation. It'd have took me a little bit longer.
In comparison of the Untouchables to New Power Generation, which do you think was the more dominant team?
Untouchables, power in numbers.
I could say Untouchables.
What about VK2 to VK3?
I want to say VK2 because you look at what they did during the MPG feud, whereas the Untouchables, we came out and beat up everybody. There was actually a couple times where VK2 beat up everybody. You got to think, you, DTC, and Cynical, there was a time where you all three attacked me. You guys gave me the 3D, and then DTC frog splashed me through a table, and you did that. MPG slowly going down. Remember that? I think VK2 was more dominant.
Huh.
I would have to agree with Chris on that because VK2 sounds like, they're obviously more aggressive than what VK3 was.
Let me ask you guys this: okay, you put VK3 where VK2 was in the same battle with the Power Generation Blackout Inc. Would VK3 be able to last that long? And then you put VK2 where the Untouchables is.
The only thing that you're going to get in there is still strength in numbers for the Untouchables because there's only 3 members of VK2.
I think a lot of it had to do with. I think if you drop Vapor and Genocide, and you pick up Cynical, and then the 2004-ish DTC, I think VK3 would have been more dominant then.
I'd have to agree with
I think it's the people in the group.
Who or what benefited most out of VK3, since we talked about who and what benefited most out of the Untouchables? Who got what the most out of VK3?
You.
I'd say you.
You got.
Can we honestly say what I was doing before VK3? Wasn't I even wrestling Psycho Circus Clown or something? I don't know. Max Destruction maybe? No, or maybe that was after. That was before I turned heel. I know that I was having some off matches before I went ballistic, but that was during EVW.
But you got the most because you got to go on after VK3, defend your company at Summer Mania to show you and your company's dominance.
Yeah, but you got to think the tag team division was hot at the time, and Team Range stuck together.
Yes, they did.
I got Money in the Bank.
Yeah. I think each and every one of you benefited in some sort of way.
I got Money in the Bank, went on and cashed in on Corey.
Yeah.
Had the hottest feud in 2012.
Right.
Headline Summer Mania, Corey. Mm-hmm. But all in all, I don't think really VK3 had a bigger star come out of it.
Do you think the VK3 wasn't a serious enough group? You got to think there was a lot of comedy.
The Viewers' Choice Awards. Didn't you guys for VK3 at Viewers' Choice Awards, whatever? Where he was in the bathroom. That was pretty comedic.
We also had the big TV, the 4 of us, and I think you were naked.
Why am I always naked?
The Untouchables probably would have beat the person up in the bathroom that was shitting.
This is true. But the good thing about VK3 is you guys were a very cohesive unit.
You gotta think though. I think something that was bad with the Untouchables is they were all very young.
Yeah.
Coming in.
Like it was a VK3 was a vet team.
Yeah, we were the vet team. We had been together for so long, whether people know it or not. Me and Genocide go back years. Then I've been in XCW since 2003, so I've known you since then. So when it all came together, it was just the old blood versus the new blood.
Right.
And we had the more bond.
So you say, you just said vets versus kind of the greener people. So, per se, Genocide, you, Hazard, and Vapor teamed up again. He came back out of retirement or whatever. If there was an Untouchables reunion, but it was a team like me, Corey Lee, James Cerebral, and Tommy Merriman.
That's a completely new scenario, though.
But that's another vet team.
Right. That would be rough.
Or even just me, Corey Lee, and James Cerebral, all Untouchable members of the first team.
Or even Karnage.
Yeah, we're all vets now.
No, we're not bringing Nathan back.
No.
He's fucking terrible.
And bring back Krysis.
He's terrible too.
Hey, Krysis was actually pretty good.
He had his days.
He had his days where he'd be good, but other than that, he sucked dick.
Strength
Like
in
literally,
numbers.
he probably sucked dick.
Yeah, he sucked one back once.
You kind of
Jeffrey.
your standpoint, since you haven't really got to talk much.
Taking
I'm
it
sure
all
that
in.
You kind of
you've taken this all in. I'm sure you've watched.
and you've kind of worked under me as a leader with me and Gabe.
You've been a tag team partner with me.
So what do you think, being in that situation, if you were an Untouchable member?
Honestly,
I think everybody who wasn't in VK3 and Untouchables at the time were doomed. Honestly, like what was Brandon Hobbs doing at the time? Wasn't he in a Hardcore Deliverance with Drago?
Drago? Who's that?
And they were they feuding like Nemesis and Max Destruction?
That's terrible.
Then you had like LOL and Colton Kravitz. I think that's what was going on in the XCW at the time.
And people,
Think about it.
This poor guy's never gonna talk.
good.
We want to know your opinion. Come on, give us your opinion here.
honestly, the way it played out before is how it played out. But saying what he was talking about, if everything were to happen again with the same people, if it would just stay the same, it'd be to a standstill. It would be the new people that came in, me, Void, Kevin Harris. It would be us that would bend that tide, see who wins, who loses, for whichever team we go to. You guys know each other far too well to be able to come out on top against each other anymore. You gotta have that mix-up in there.
The shock factor.
Which is why a majority, minus Corey Lee, all ended up in the royalty.
And people that hate each other can.
It's okay.
It's
I don't
weird,
want to be part of the royalty anyway.
but people that
It
hate
sucks, don't worry.
people
I know from
that hate each
experience.
other can mesh well together and become a good team. You gotta think. He screwed me for a whole year. He was in the royalty. Me and you feuded. We were in the royalty. Psycho Circus Clan and Eternal Darkness feuded each other, and they've been a team for like 20 fucking years. So I mean, me and Corey Lee could start an Untouchable again, and it could work.
Is there gonna be another? I'm not saying Untouchables or VK3 or 4 or whatever, but is there gonna be another dominant team like that? That's not gonna be. It's gonna be made up of the younger card guys,
Yes.
There always can be.
like a team.
One common enemy is all you need.
Why you keep looking at me?
Because you're always the common enemy.
I mean, could a team of Void, Sin, and Kevin Harris come up and do the same things? You know, like
I
just
don't think they have.
as the greenest guys that I could think of off the top of my head. You know,
They would really need. They would need one of
Mike
us
Skills?
in there.
Yeah.
They would really need
They'd-
someone to lead them.
They'd
One of
have
you
to.
four
either
does.
They
that-
would be lost puppy dogs.
I think if you throw like, I mean, he doesn't have the greatest mic skills 100% yet either. But if you put them three, and then maybe throw Ryan Grayson in there too, I think they could do something.
You just gotta get Ryan Grayson pissed off every time.
And then
He's
he'll
got a
go,
point.
then he'll go Super Saiyan. He'll scream.
I'll level up.
But who's to say, like Tommy Merriman's? We all know he's been gone for a while. Who's to say Tommy Merriman's couldn't get a team like that together?
it could happen. Do you think we're gonna see any teams form of that stature in 2016?
Not of that stature.
The royalty is pretty much imploding.
This is true.
I'd say it would be 17.
You're getting screwed 12-inch black dildo right now.
I've been
Like
hit
that
the head with
one.
one.
No, he beat me to it. Damn.
Anything else about this crazy feud in closing?
No, I think we pretty much covered all points. You got anything?
I think the only person
I got
that did
plenty.
not get anything out of this was Nathan Vandiver.
He got an ass whipping.
Because I don't think Krysis would have lasted in the XCW as long, nor would he have had the team of the End of Days without the Untouchables to begin with.
Yeah. The bad thing was, Nathan Vandiver was an alright wrestler. I mean, he came back at one show, wrestled you, and had a good match.
He had potential. His mindset wasn't there.
He just started slacking, and those matches were terrible. He just couldn't keep up with it. He'd do good one time, and then the next 5 shows, he just
It's
sucked
that
it.
younger generation. The same thing happened with Colton Kravitz.
He kind of, I agree on that, but I'm not going to say because they have two different wrestling mindsets, but Nathan Vandiver kind of reminds me of Billy Nova.
Possibly.
Mm-hmm. Just Billy Nova's got better skill.
They
I
have
think
that-
Nathan had been more polished.
Yeah.
He was a little bit more polished, yeah.
Because what most people don't know is
I compared Nathan Vandiver to Jacob Cyanide.
Oh, that's terrible.
Nathan Vandiver actually started watching the shows before he was in the shows as well. So I mean, he had the wrestling knowledge.
I think he was he was more worried about getting his dick sucked by Austin Chaos than he was anything else. Or Austin's sister, that is.
The only reason why
That escalated.
Nathan did not stick around is because I was still not with Kelly. That's the reason why he was around.
That's fucked up.
It's the truth. Once I broke up with Kelly, he stopped.
He was like, fuck you, dude. I don't want to be friends anymore.
So was Tommy Merriman only around last season because you were with Cheyenne, and so was he?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did I say that out loud? The next time we're here for XCW Men of Honor, we're gonna be
I just caught that.
we're gonna be talking about cage matches.
Oh, am I in this one too?
Yeah, probably.
Yes!
I had to because I was in the first.
Right.
And I
Until
bought it.
next time, from Corey, Chris, Ryan Grayson, Hazard, myself, Fletch, we'll see you here